The Eel That Slept by M.A. Sansom. Prologue. November the 6th, 1835. Robert Daintree lifted the oilskin bag to his lips and stood up to drink. He'd stopped at the creek to fill up before heading east towards the bridge that he'd built only a year earlier. It was frustrating to be leaving now when there was still so much to do, but Charles would be arriving soon and he needed to deliver his message in person. Charlie Darwin may have been a dreamer, but he was a skeptical man, and Robert knew that the only way to convince him would be with hard, physical proof. He looked north to the house that he'd once called home and thought back to the moment when he'd first discovered the place, marking its location with a row of totara saplings so he could return the following year. It was a simple building, made out of tin and planks, and it gave away nothing of the wealth that he'd amassed during his time spent there. It was smouldering now, though, demolished by the fire that he'd set before leaving, and now, as the sun rose over the mountains, Robert saw the smoke limping upwards like a final death cry. He removed the bag from across his back and peered down at the treasure within. Most mornings, its glow alone would have been enough to warm him, but today it seemed tainted, and he shut the bag to muffle its whispers. He raised the oilskin once more to his lips and took another sip before spitting it out. The water had tasted bad for days now, ever since the red-coloured rain that had passed through a few days earlier. He would have to live with it for now, though, at least until he'd made it to Otakau and a transport ship that would take him north. He pulled another oilskin from his belt and bent down to fill it up. The icy water stung as he held it under the surface, and he gritted his teeth as he waited for the bag to fill. But the biting sensation grew too intense, and he flinched away from the pain. What he would give now for one of Charlie's chemical concoctions that warmed the skin. He rubbed his hands to ward off the cold, and then plunged the bag once more, aiming to fill it to the brim. But as he did so, the bag suddenly pulled him down and he fell forwards into the creek, tumbling head over heels into the fast-moving water. When Robert surfaced, his face burning with cold, he watched as his bag of treasures disappeared from sight. Swimming against the flow, he tried desperately to chase after it, but even at full stroke, he struggled to maintain his position, and he soon found himself going backwards. The cold was crippling now, and as his limbs grew heavy and numb, the world began to change. Even the air inside his lungs seemed to freeze, and every breath he took seemed to cut like razors in his throat. This was it, he suddenly realized. His time had come, and his heart seemed to stutter inside his chest. And then the whispers came, warm and enticing. He still had his other bag, the one with the larger nuggets, and he reached down to grab it, desperate not to lose its precious cargo. But just like the oilskin, it pulled him downwards, and he let go to keep his head above water. "Join us," whispered the voices. "Let go of the light, Robert, and welcome the dark." They'd said that before in his dreams and his stupor, but now they were here again, and their promise seemed real, not just a figment of his anger. "Come join your wife, Robert. She's waiting with us, here in the darkness." It was a promise of redemption, a prize that he no longer deserved, and he knew that he should take it before the offer was cruelly snatched away. "Take me," he whispered. "Take me before I change my mind." He regretted saying it, of course, almost as soon as the words had left his lips, but by then it was too late, and as the water pulled him down once more, it wasn't the warm embrace of Eleanor that found him. Instead, he saw death and a pair of glowing green eyes.